My name is Zintle Kobeni Dilanga. I am the founder and fundraising director of the Great People of South Africa organization, based here in the Western Cape. We do a lot of work on gender-based violence, sexual and reproductive health rights, and just ensuring equal and quality access to the criminal justice system, particularly for GBV survivors. So we're having quite an important discussion once again today, which is being facilitated by Gender Links, Women's Voice in Leadership South Africa, in partnership with Global Affairs Canada, Amplify Change, as well as, I'm just going to remember now, yes, as well as Southern Africa Gender Protocol Alliance. So it is quite a great pleasure to be here with everyone. And thank you so much to everyone that's managed to join us today. Those who aren't here with us today, those who are able to be here, in fact, with us today, can gladly share the information that will be discussed here today. Okay, so just a few ground rules as we get into it. I would like everyone to just use the chat box. I see already people are active there. Use the chat box to share your name, your surname, where you're from, which organization you're representing, and yeah, what you're famous for, I guess. So please, let's do that. And any other question that may arise during our discussion can also be shared on the chat box. You're more than welcome to use your reactions down there at the bottom. You can raise your hand if you have any kind of questions, or if you want to contribute in any manner, you're more than welcome to do that. So we'll wait for Mam Colin for now. I'm not sure if she's been able to join us on the line, and then we can kickstart the program. Is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Welcome, everyone. Let's keep those messages coming through on the chat box, introducing ourselves.
Zintle, you can go ahead. Colleen has just joined us.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nomti. Mam Colleen, welcome to the program. We're very happy to have you joining us. So Mam Colleen will definitely take us through that. Mam Colleen, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Zintle, and good afternoon, everyone. Not unexpected that we had that little rude interruption. It's happened at a number of our dialogues, but we persist. This is the second in a three-part series of dialogues on feminism during the month of August. As you may know, those of you who joined us first, our first dialogue was demystifying feminism, Zintle. It was largely based on some research that we did with grantees of the Women Voice in Leadership Partnership in South Africa, showing that many of us still have some discomforts with this word. And how do we feel as organizations? How do we identify? The fund, just to remind us, is a fund created by Global Affairs Canada, which has a feminist foreign policy. And among others, we had Global Affairs Canada explaining to us what they understood by a feminist foreign policy. So I think it was a really good opening salvo to the series. Today, we go a step further by exploring this issue of African feminism. Is there such a thing as African feminism? And let me remind us of a quote that we shared at the first dialogue by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, the renowned Nigerian author, whose seminal essay I would really recommend to all of us. We should all be feminists. You find it a moment to read that essay because it's very telling. But she basically says that culture does not make us, we make culture. And so today we are part of creating that culture. We're part of co-creating that culture. And we're looking forward to a very robust debate and discussion about, is feminism a Western construct? Is it a construct that we can make and shape? And how do we want to make and shape it? We have an amazing lineup of speakers. Zinhle will tell us more about them. But in addition to that, we have all of us, 48 participants, and I have no doubt that by the time we finish, we'll have more. Last time we had up to 80 participants by the time we finished. So I believe we're going to get many more joining as we go along. And it is your views and voices that we look forward to hearing through polls, through the ideas board that will be shared for us to post up our thoughts, and most critically through the chat. So let's chat and let's create this new future for ourselves. Thank you so much, Zinhle. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Mam Colleen. I think that I'm actually not sure. I think we're supposed to have a poll, Mam Colleen. Am I correct?
Yes, Zinhle. I'm doing it now.
Okay, Snumti will put up the poll for us. Okay. Okay. Okay, our poll is up and we can all participate.
So just to assist Zinhle a little bit, our poll question or our statement is that feminism is a Western ideology that undermines African culture. Is it totally in sync with Ubuntu? For us to shape as an African ideology, or none of the above? So you can just put in your choices there on your understanding of what feminism is. Teresa, can you tell us what the results look like so far?
Okay, so we have 34 people who have filled in, 36 now, who have filled in the poll. I don't know, maybe more are still coming through. Yes, more are still coming through. People are still voting on the poll. Maybe just give it a few seconds.
Yes, I think we should give it a few seconds.
Okay, so I'm going to say to end the poll now. We have 42 responses of the 54 people who are in attendance, and I'll share a screen showing the results. Okay, so these are the results for what is feminism poll question. And 38% of people said none of the above options. Explains or describes what feminism is. Another 38% said feminism is for us to shape as an African ideology. Others said 14% said totally in sync with Ubuntu. And 10% said feminism is a Western ideology that undermines African culture.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you to everyone that has participated. Okay, so now we are going to be having some very important, very interesting guests joining us today. We are going to be looking at intergenerational dialogues on African feminism. We've got Umam Sarah Longwe as well as Dr. Yaliwe Clark. This is an interesting duo. They are mother and daughter. So we are going to hear from them on what their ideas are on feminism. And I think that I will then hand over to the ladies and they can share their views with us.
We need to show the... Hi, I'm Sarah Rongwe. I'm based in Lusaka, as I've said. With the topic today, without much ado, I can say feminism, as far as I'm concerned, I think I've been one since I was 5 or even younger. As soon as I could see that there was gender disparity in my treatment within my family, and I have taken them to task, asking them questions. Why is auntie being beaten? Why is by uncle, why is auntie so cruel to the youngest of the wives and so forth? And even I am a feminist, and I think I've been from as far as I saw gender disparity, and as I grew older, I discovered that there's something called patriarchal ideology, and I think that's what I've been fighting for. And even now, even when I came up with my Longwe Women's Empowerment Framework, in trying to explain to everybody that there is gender disparity, which must end. So a feminist must always fight against gender disparity.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Sarah.
Yeah, I did hear most of what you said, I think, over the disturbances. I'll just wait for Nomti and team to give us a go-ahead.
We can go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so I'm Yaliwe Clark, and definitely agree with a lot of what Sarah Longwe has said. Maybe I should track my own entry into feminism. So I grew up around Sarah Longwe. She's my mother. And for as far back as I can remember, she has been challenging gender discrimination in many ways, right? And I must say, in my early years, I remember listening to her take part in meetings of various women's rights organizations in Zambia. She would pick me up from school, and then, of course, we wouldn't go straight home because home was far. It didn't make sense to go home straight. So we would stop at a meeting or two, and I would be sitting in the background, listening to conversations about whether it's gender discrimination involving a law, or it was planning a workshop around topics such as the question of property grabbing that occurs amongst widows. Typically, widows in Zambia would have their property and their children taken away from them by their late husband's extended family on the premise that because they were married into the family, lobola was paid, then the property was owned by the man's family. So I remember growing up, while my mom was busy with various campaigns. This one is an example I myself got involved in. And I remember working alongside mom in my own pockets of influence and social change processes that I got involved in while I was a student at the University of Zambia. I got involved in workshops on how to write a will. And these workshops were run after years of a campaign put in place a law, the Interstate Succession Act, I think it was of 1979 or 1989.
It
Mom
was
can
passed
correct
in
me.
1989.
1989. And after that law was passed, my mom was involved with a number of women's rights organizations and activists in Zambia at the time to push that. And I got involved. So I really can't remember at what point it was clear to me that feminism is something that's necessary for us to create a just society. And I think that's where my education around feminism began before I remember it beginning. Breakfast tables, meetings, conversations in which, because I had the opportunity, and I guess it's a privilege, right, to be living with, raised by somebody who had no doubts about the significance of gender equality and that gender discrimination exists in our everyday and it needs to be changed. And I remember very clearly, and this is an interesting story Mom and I have, Sarah Long and I have, when I got to the point, and I already been involved in all this activism, this example of property grabbing and ensuring that, you know, people write wills and people are aware that there's a law that protects widows from property grabbing. I got to the point of registering to study at the University of Zambia, and Sarah Longwe asked me, she says, so what are you going to study? So I said, well, I'm not sure. She says, well, you can study law so that, you know, we can push women's rights. And I said, that's why I'm not going to study law, so that I can do other things other than fight for women's rights. And of course, that was a period in my life where it was all about rebellion, right? And yet here I am, director of the African Gender Institute at the University of Cape Town. And I have, over the years, not only watched my parents write and deliver this women's empowerment framework that she mentioned, that is now internationally renowned. I started running my own gender training workshops prior to actually working for the African Gender Institute. And now I can say, well, I know what African feminism is, you know, I'm clear about what it involves. And it's to do with naming the versions of oppression that have to do with patriarchal social systems that are happening on the continent, but that are also rooted in our long histories prior to the arrival of colonization, but also as a result of colonization. And Mom always reminds me that, you know, we've got various kinds of patriarchy. We need to be aware of the patriarchy in our own social systems here on the continent and the versions of patriarchy that came with colonization. And in our case, for Mom and I, we're very aware of the British versions of patriarchy because Zambia was colonized by Britain and most of Southern Africa was colonized by Britain, aside from Angola, DRC, and Mozambique, right? If we think of Southern Africa as those 13 countries. So yes, it's about challenging, you know, social systems that privilege mostly masculinities, and I would add the kinds of masculinities that are considered normative, heteronormative, where heterosexuality is premised as a way of being, and masculinity, a certain masculinity, as more important, more deserving of attention, of resources. And we're challenging those systems, whether it's through legal systems, changing family, you know, social systems, our everyday interaction with each other, and also dealing with hackers, right, on this platform.
Yes, and the good thing is that
stabilizing us.
Yes, as a parent, when your child is going through schooling, I was most pleased when she said, "I'm not doing any of your gender the gender issues, the law and everything," and she said, "I'm doing philosophy." I gleed very much because I knew now she'll find where the philosophical thinking, the ideological thinking, and the actual practice on the ground is not meeting. And she will really discover that the philosophers were trying to be human, but the whole world around her is not being human, especially towards the females. And of course, the dialogue between us has helped me because to broaden my thinking, because in my time, we were in a heterosexual sphere. And of course, I'm the first to admit that my framework is very much in the sexual binary aspect, which is this, happening now and very prime, and everywhere you look, there is gender discrimination. It's against a female adult, young, and even a baby. So the dialogue we've been having, you know, in a way, I've been asking her, I said, I'm going to be talking about my framework. My framework has been put in a frame, but there are these other things which have come about to explain, because not everybody is on the same, and of course, on the same platform or same wavelength, so much that I know the binary is one aspect some people have accepted and going through. And also we know in this free world, you know, is what she's talking about. So I've been able to change, to include, you know, not just female women are being are being discriminated against, and also to know that there are not just two genders, there are much more, and we're still discovering different ways in which a society is treating each other, and with all the good things and all the negative aspects. So I'm still learning. She was learning from me, now I'm learning from her, which is wonderful.
Absolutely
Thank
incredible.
you.
Thank you so much. That was so amazing and quite inspiring to hear from you ladies. Thank you so much. I think the questions that I had around today's discussions were already covered by
Okay.
Sara. Yes, when she handed over to used Dr. Clark, you just covered everything. And I think that, I'm not sure if Sis Nomti will agree with me, our time does not allow. There was an extract that I wanted us to have a look at, but looking at the time, I think that it will not allow us to maybe go through that. Sis Nomti, you can advise me on that.
For the discussion.
Sis Nomti?
I'm saying maybe we can leave it for the discussion.
Definitely, I also agree with you then. All right then. So thank you so much once again. That is quite informative. Now we will definitely be moving along with our program. Today we are also joined by High Commissioner Mamtenjiwe Mtinto. I hope I'm pronouncing the surname correctly. She will then be taking us through feminism and the fight for freedom. A view from the trenches. So we're very excited. I hope everyone is to hear from her. I know I am. And I will therefore hand over to the High Commissioner.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody, especially to Sarah. It's been a long time. Let me start by thanking Gender Links, the Southern African Gender Protocol Alliance, and all their partners for having this debate, particularly at the time that, of course, it's our Women's Month, but particularly when we're celebrating 60 years of the Pan-Africanist Women's Organization, PAO. And many tend to ignore or are even unaware that on the 31st of July, 1962, which is 60 years ago, the African women gathered in Tanzania and formed PAO, which I would dare call one of the first African feminist organizations. They focused on the need for the African women to unite in struggle against colonialism and gender inequality. Important to emphasize is that this was before the so-called forefathers woke up 9 months later and formed the OAU, the forerunner of the AU. These African women were trailblazers who, fighting in all fronts and against all odds, placed the continent at the cusp of freedom, unity, and development, which then explodes this myth of history is made by great men. I suppose the discussion today will have to ask and learn from their experiences whether they were feminists or not. And if they were, what kind of feminists or strand of feminism were they? And a question that we have spent ages debating this feminism, what it is. As old as I am, I'm not sure if I'm a feminist or not. It just depends on who I'm talking to, I think. Because the question of the naming, which I'm very happy that Yaliwa was talking about, the naming, the labeling, and clearing your identities is quite helpful. But on the other hand, to what extent does this help Umamkize, who is still dealing with very basic issues, whether it is important for her to be named a feminist or to be part of the feminist movement or not? Fortunately, I was asked, particularly because I think the organizers know that I'm far from being academic or theoretical about these matters, especially this vexed question of feminism and particularly African feminism, as to why it is important, who is a feminist, why are you a feminist, is it an ideology, is it a theory, is it a tool for action? What do feminists do for the, as I said, for the Mamkizers? I've been asked to talk about the trenches, so I probably am a trench feminist. So I'll talk about the experience of the trenches, and I talked to some of these trench feminists, and I actually found that out of the 10 of us, we had different views about what is African feminism. It needs another day. I think that the organizers, we need a CODESA or even a TRC on feminism and African feminism. As a young child, my own stories then. As a young child, I grew up with my aunt in a place called Mbozolo, and my uncle was working in the mines and would come once in a while. But one time he came and poor guy was very sick and he went on and just died on us. And one night, just a month after the death of my uncle, our homestead, which consisted of about 3 huts and what we called Uklande, which was a four-cornered house, was burnt to the ground completely. And the following day, when we tried to find out as to why, it turned out that the villagers, led by men and some women, had decided that my aunt had lawyered, bewitched my uncle, and therefore the house had to be burnt and we had to be driven out of that particular village. And of course, as children, we were quite upset about this aunt who was a witch. It turned out much later, when we were now in another village, that actually our aunt was not a witch at all. But the chief, my family, and some of the villagers, men and women, had wanted her to be Ngenwat. They wanted her to be Ngenwat, which means that in translation, direct is to be entered, which meant then that one of the brothers or family members must marry her because she belonged to the Plaatje family, and therefore she had to continue. And my aunt had dared to say, there's no way I'm going to be Ngenwat by any woman, by any man. If I want to be Ngenwat, I'll choose the man I want to Ngena. Not anybody is going to decide on me. Now, the question then that arose for me at that time, it didn't arise at that time, but much later, was my aunt actually a feminist? Because she had wanted to make her own choices about who she loved and who she married or did not marry. In the trenches, our fight was not only against apartheid, but it was also against, there was a gender front against patriarchy, because it was alive and kicking. This was particularly so in the 70s, because there was a tendency in the liberation movement to assume that women's liberation or gender equality will be a byproduct of the national struggle. Hence, our question was always about the national question or the class question. So vicious struggles, sometimes subtle, sometimes very open, about the women's question were raised, and many of us had to elaborate on this triple-fold struggle of women. Fortunately, there were leaders like O.R. Tambo and others who better understood that there could be no liberation without the liberation of women, and that women themselves did not have to see themselves as junior. And in my view, without these definitions, I think that O.R. Tambo was one of the best African feminists of the time and was ahead of his peers. However, at that time, none of us used the term feminism in our terminology or even in our definitions, including gender. We were to use gender in the 80s, but earlier on, we didn't use that for many reasons. I'll just highlight a few of these. One of these was that our feminist sisters were calling us terrorists, and these were mainly from the Western countries. The others were engaged in researching about these poor women and their conditions in Africa. A lot of patronizing of these women in Africa, and of course they were producing their own books and their own research findings about us. And of course, it also should be borne in mind that it was the time of the Cold War. So there were movements, the Western feminist movement and the Eastern feminine movement, which were different in many ways. So for us, it was not so much that we needed the terminologies to define who we were and what we were about. The driving force for us was we were involved in the emancipation of South Africa, women included. And of course, we were not that crazy about theorizing and doing all these things. We had a country to liberate, we had a war to fight. What some feminists of today, especially the young ones, do not realize is that both women and progressive men were fighting a revolution within a revolution, as the Vietnamese women would say. What we needed and actually relied on was what one colleague of mine recently has said. We just needed a toolbox, a huge toolbox with a lot of tools to use against patriarchy from time to time, different tools at different times against patriarchy. So in recent times, we do get very criticized about not being a feminist. I just want to tell some of the stories that as women we were suffering. I was made a commander in Uganda, and then I had to meet Mzee Museveni. And he was in his office, and I was sitting there, this commander coming to meet this big president. And he was going up and down and not paying any attention to me. And much later, he then was asked his PA, where is this Kondo Sizwe commander? And then they pointed at me. And Mzee Museveni turned around in complete anger and disgust and said that there's no way this South Africa is going to get free. How do you have a woman commanding forces, commanding an army, and a thin one at that? If only I was a little bit fat, probably from Zay, it would not have been that bad, but it was a thin one at that. So you could actually then see that the question of my being a woman already, even with our own allies, was an issue because I was a woman and I was not supposed to be there. So I had to prove my capabilities, especially to Mzee. Was I a feminist? Was I not a feminist? The approach that I took of just proving myself and not arguing about my rights and whatever, neither here nor there. And of course, as women, we sometimes not only had to negotiate with patriarchy, we had to humor patriarchy, and while we directly fought with patriarchy. And sometimes we had to use patriarchy to our own. I don't know whether that was feminism or not, to our own. I remember in one place in Lesotho, I was nearly caught with a lot of arms of weapons in my vehicle. And of course, I had already had a strategy. If at all I was carrying these things, I would wear hot pants, my dear, and have a, what was it called, mid-rib, just show my ribs there and show my thighs and show everything. And as I stopped, I got out of the car and started flirting with the police. And of course, I was not searched. Was that playing to patriarchy or was that feminism? I am not so sure. In the camps themselves, there were benefits from patriarchy because we were few women and there were lots of men. And all those men, there were about, during my time, there were about 800 of them, and we were about 21 women. So all of them were quite clear that at some point, even if we didn't fall in love with them, we were going to sleep with them, except that we didn't. But flirting with patriarchy was also nice because then if you flirted with them and kept on making it sound like it was actually possible to have this relationship, we got amagwinya, which was something that was rare in the camps, and the men were the ones that were making amagwinya. So if you then flirted with them, you had an advantage. You would get amagwinya, and you even get some more, which we called ambush, which means you get more food than others. So we were never in a permanent state of war against patriarchy. We were in different stages from our toolboxes of how we dealt with patriarchy. Whether or not today that can be called feminism or not, I have no idea. I will pass the question of Codessa because many of you would have understood that we were marginalized by all the political parties. Women were marginalized, and those who came from the trenches, which would have been from mainly the ANC, the PAC, and so on, were not even included. So we had, again, as women, to come together in what we call the National Women's National Coalition for both inclusion in the negotiation, as well as engendering the negotiations themselves and ensuring much later on that you had a gender-sensitive constitution. But none of us were mobilizing and organizing ourselves as feminists. We came from different organizations with different beliefs and different lived experiences. But we found a way of coming together, uniting around the issue of ensuring that the constitution that came out. And of course, we used the Women's Charter, which was recently being discussed in Parliament. Now, you guys can say later on whether this was feminism or not. Once in Parliament, once again, we're to find common ground as women activists, gender activists from across political parties, because there had never been any discussions or any committees around or about women and or gender. And this is why Prex Governor is one of those people who formed what was called Committee for the Quality of Life of Women and Status of Women. It was not an easy feat, but even during that time, you would not find across the political parties anyone calling herself or even himself a feminist. We had experiences where when we go out as parliamentarians to talk to women, we were rejected by the women, especially women in the rural areas, because they saw us as the others that have their own issues to deal with while they were having their own practical issues to deal with. So the question of the practical gender needs versus the strategic gender needs was always there, but not discussed as such. For instance, Mary Ruth went to one rural area and were telling women that it was their time. There's this song that now is being sung, they are roaring into Parliament. And we were telling them that they should be getting out of the kitchen, except that one lady said to Mary Ruth, we are very happy for you for having gotten out of the kitchen. But what we wish you could do for us, just give us your kitchen. Tina was still wanting a kitchen anywhere that you have moved from. These were women that were dealing with what we call bread and butter issues. I will jump many stories of this time. I just share another one of this question of Abafaz. One comrade is taking me By this time, I'm in sort of leadership of the structures of trenches. I mean, still continuing in some trenches, but I'm sort of in different structures and in leadership. And this comrade is not quite in leadership, but he's taking me somewhere to address workers. And on the way, I can see that the comrade is very uncomfortable with the fact that I was the one who was being sent to go and address. And the fact that I was leadership, I was a woman as far as he was concerned, and full stop. He's one of the big leaders and ministers today. But he interrogated me right through as we're driving for 3 hours, was interrogating me on what I'd done. And of course, each time these things that I was being interrogated was as against, were you there with Steve Biko? Were you there with Chris Honey? What did you do? Can you shoot? And all these things that would make me an honorary man, probably in his mind. And of course, when we get to the camps, I get worse treatment because the men continue singing, they are not going to stop. And one of the men then says, calls this man by name, "When so-and-so, we asked you to bring us our leadership. And now you bring us a woman, a thin woman for that matter." Once again, this thinness comes in because it is quite clear. Nobody is bothered about my intellect or anything. It's just bothered about my body. So what they see immediately is my body is thin. Probably it has helped now that I'm a little bit fat. At least that part is removed. My response, once again, just like with Museveni, was to then make sure that I up my act. I don't know whether that was a feminist response, but I had to up my act so that I'm respected, just like Museveni had to respect me after about a year having worked with me. And even here, I had to up my act. And one of the men, the one who had been very rough in saying that we want our leaders, not thin women. And then says, no, she's fine. She's fine. She's actually quite good. No, actually, she's a man. It's just that she does not have balls. So the question of my sexuality, of my sex, and the fact that I didn't have these private parts that would have defined my intelligence. I could not resist, because they were speaking in Xhosa, I could not resist saying to them, you know what? The balls have got one role that they play, and they are in a different part of the body. And the intellect, the brain, is somewhere else. And if we went in this direction, would actually have to probably measure the balls of each man to then see whether the size of the balls match the brains of each man. Of course, I never had a problem, any other problem after that with men in that particular camp, because they knew that I could be just as rude as they were. Years later, much later, and convinced that where feminism really is very difficult and it's not for me. I'm addressing students at WITS, and one brilliant student, very brilliant student, I was talking about the two fronts that were to fight from in exile and so on. So she just said very nicely, "Hi, Mama, you never were feminist. And in fact, if anything, you sold out both on women and feminism." Yo, what yambi into being told that after all these years, when I thought that I'd engaged in so many struggles for the freedom of my country, actually I had sold out. When I was asked to talk today, going towards the end, I asked a young colleague to share ideas on the latest writings about feminism, and she brought me an article on what was called old feminists, young bitches, stating that young feminists do not need old feminists to empower them, but they can empower themselves, that is the young feminists, they can empower each other. And old feminists, all they need to do is to trust that these young feminists can empower themselves. And what they should do is just to make resources available for these young feminists. And another one in the same publication by Laura Hudson wrote that there's a new feminist war, young women versus old women. And she said that while she had a great respect for the contribution that many women made to the feminist movement in difficult times, it is also time for them to listen, learn, and step aside. She adds that this is also because age tends to correlate with not being on board with progress. I had not even realized that there was actually a war between the young and the old. I thought that we were all engaged in a war against injustice, against denial of human rights, against patriarchy, homophobia, sexism, and all these things, including the LGBTI community struggles. But it looked like there was a war between, or there is a war between the old and the young women. Of course, I think that patriarchy must be having fun to realize that we are busy just fighting amongst ourselves instead of focusing what should be occupying us. I have had opportunity to work in Spain, and I have witnessed yet another war that I was completely unaware of. The feminists were fighting viciously against transgender women who they said could not be feminists. Women of the same socialist party were actually holding demonstrations against their trans comrades. And I repeat, I can only say it in Xhosa, feminism. This thing of feminism is difficult. My niece Tandiwe was recently taking me through some current feminisms, like what she called TERF, which she says is an acronym for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminism, which, like their Spanish counterparts, rejects the assertion that trans women are women. And they were supporting the exclusion of trans women from women's spaces and struggles. On the other hand, she says that there's trans-inclusive feminists, TIFs, who assert that these exclusive ideas are anti-feminist and are transphobic. With all these exclusivist feminisms, one wonders if we are soon going to win the struggle for gender equality. Africa is still regrettably stuck on binaries, as Sarah was saying, binary identities. And one wonders how long it is going to take for us to free ourselves of all these exclusivist definitions. Perhaps in Africa, we need our African feminism that is going to transcend all these divides and make a difference to Mam Kize, who still wants a kitchen, as a Mam Ruth story. And also women who want to break the class gender ceiling. And perhaps an African feminism that is going to combine theory and practice rather than look at theory versus practice. Perhaps an African feminism that is also going to look at our lived experiences, an African feminist that is going to respect me as an old lady, but also value my experience and think that there can be something that can be taken from my experience instead of trying to find a big dustbin, because now I'm fat, very big dustbin into which I must be thrown because I'm an old feminist, if I'm a feminist at all. A feminism that is going to respect and live the saying that inyati ibuzwa kwabaphambili, but also at the same time know that times and conditions do change, and we elders should also learn and give space and support the young people in their feminism. But we should not have their feminism and our feminism. We should just have feminism, whatever it is going to be, and remove this divide between them and us. A feminism that is going to recognize all the intersectionalities and embeddedness, because as Sarah and I think also Yali was saying earlier on, that you are not dealing with just one feminism or one patriarchy or one feminism. we are dealing with an embedded intersection because the colonialists in their trail, they brought their own patriarchy, which intersected with and embedded itself and even appropriated our own indigenous patriarchy to form a very intricate web of these patriarchies. And so when women in Europe, for instance, see themselves as being advanced in terms of gender, what they forget is that we are still also trying to untangle the patriarchy that they left with us as part of the colonizers. We need a feminism of Ubuntu, a feminism that, as Charlotte Maxake once said, kill that spirit of self. And if you can rise, bring someone with you. Rise because you can bring others. So a feminism that is isolationist, I don't think would be a feminism that works for Africa. Thank you very much.
Wow, 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 wow. Thank you so much, Mam Tenji. Thank you very, very, very much. I think what you have said to us today will leaves, a lot to be thought about when it comes to feminism and Africanism. Thank you so much, Mama. All right, Tik. We are going to definitely move to our next guest, and that is Umam Rose Haji Mwalimu, Media Center consultant, trainer, and mentor. She will then be speaking to us about feminism in Tanzania. No ifs, no buts. Ma'am Rose, over to you.
I think she was kicked out. She lost connection.
Okay, we think she was kicked out, Zinhle.
Okay. All right, then, while we see how we can sort that out to bring her back to join us, let us go to our ideas board. Sis Nomti?
Okay, colleagues, if you look in the chat, I've just pasted a link to the ideas board where we have 3 questions where we are asking, if you click on the link, we are asking, what does African feminism mean to you? So you can just click on that plus sign and then you write what African feminism means to you. Okay, you'll see on my screen, if you go to the chat, you'll see that I've put in the link to the ideas board, and you can start collating your responses on what does African feminism mean to you. So you just click on the add sticky on the red, on the green plus sign, and you just put what it means to you.
Yeah, I can't even see. It's nothing like this what this woman is saying. I can't see it on my side.
So if you look on the chat,
okay,
let me just paste it again. If you go to the chat, you'll see I've just pasted the link to the ideas board. And we welcome any comments and questions into the chat. Okay. Our following question is, who are the feminists that inspire you? Who are the feminists that inspire you? So under the second question, you can just add and just write about the feminists that inspire you. Okay, and the last one is, what inspires your African feminism or your African feminism? Okay, I'm noting what is written in the chat, and I am putting it on the ideas board. What inspires your African feminisms? Ma'am Rose, are you in?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes.
I think we'll just give it 2 minutes and then you'll be able to proceed.
Thank you.
So some of the responses that we got, who are your African feminists that inspire you? We've got Mam Tenji, we've got my Sarah, we've got Mam Colleen, we have Amina Mama, Elaine Salo, Hope Chigudu, Chimandimanda Gochi. We've got Professor Kheti Sitati. Ooh, means we must just Google some of these ladies. Got Dawn Kavanagh. Dr. Lewanika. Okay. Wow. What inspires your African feminisms? The need for quality and equity in our everyday life. Ubuntu, as it is an inclusive ideology. My personal experiences, even after all the different waves, first, second, and third of feminism, and how not much has changed. Wow. Raising and connecting with young people with the hope and prayer that we can co-create an equal, kind, and giving world. Women's freedom, the need to dominate male dominated spheres and fight all inequalities. So we'll keep the ideas board open for a little bit while longer, whilst we go to Ma'am Rose. Okay, Ma'am Rose, are you back in?
Ma'am Rose?
Seems like we lost her again.
Yes, I think she is struggling with connection.
Okay.
Maybe just give her a minute or two.
Okay, Zinhle, you can proceed and do the discussion.
Okay, then. That was quite an interesting poll we had there. We will then move to our discussion. Sisnam T, will you be displaying the extract for me?
Okay.
There's Ma'am Rose. I see her there.
Yes.
Ma'am
Okay.
Rose.
Yeah. Are you hearing me?
Welcome. Yes, 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 definitely.
Do you hear me?
Go for it. Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you so much. And I'm sorry, I have some problems with connectivity here. Okay, I'll go straight away to what I'm supposed to do. I've been asked to present on feminism in Tanzania with a focus on media. Now, since much has been said by former presenters on feminism, I'll focus on a brief introduction of feminism in Tanzania, how the media played a role in a transformative feminist movement in Tanzania, the issue of LGBTIQ, lessons learned, and conclusion. As Yaliwe and Mamlongwe said, feminism do exist. And feminism does exist in Tanzania and is no different from that of other parts of Africa, although they are not all reflective of all of the experiences African women have. Modern Tanzanian feminism was solidified during the landmark UN Decade for Women in 1975 to 85, which resulted in feminist activism and scholarship spreading widely across the country. Since then, the Tanzanian feminist movement has expanded in policy, legislation, scholarship, and also in cultural realm. Modern feminism influences women to constantly fight against the allegedly suppressive patriarchy that has haunted them since the beginning of time. Instead of inspiring women to become happy individuals who benefit future generations of seeking revenge for the mistreatment of past ages. Gender bias in education, the gender pay gap, gender disparities in agriculture, poor access of healthcare, the high price of collecting water, child marriage, and other forms of gender-based violence, and lack of representation for women and girls at the policy level are but some of the examples of gender issues. The government of Tanzania has adopted policies that advance gender equality for youth inclusion in a supportive, enabling environment. And in bringing about gender equality, the government has in place the National Development Vision 2025 that states, among other things, that Tanzania should ensure the attainment of gender equality and the empowerment of women in all socioeconomic and political relations and culture by the year 2025. So we have the gender policy in Tanzania, section 1, clause 1.1 on gender equality. Now coming back to the heart of the matter, the media in a transformative feminist movement in Tanzania. I'm sorry, I'm having that butterfly a little bit because I was struggling here. Media play important roles in society. They report on current events, provide frameworks for interpretation, and mobilize citizens with regard to various issues. I will cite the example of how Tanzania Media Women Association, TAMA, and GEMSAT played a role as a transformative movement in Tanzania. Tanzania Media Women's Association, TAMA, was founded in 1987, part of the new generation of women's rights organization in Africa, established around the time of the 1985 World Conference on Women in Nairobi, distinguished by their autonomy from national movements. In Tanzania, these groups included Women Research and Documentation Project at the University of Dar es Salaam, the Women Advancement Trust, WAT, and the Tanzania Gender Networking Program, TGNP. The organization's goal was to encourage more opportunities for female journalists and to address gender discrimination in newsrooms across Tanzania. However, during the process of writing a constitution, the organization's goals broadened to focus on educating women on their rights and advocating for the goals of women and children through the media nationwide. TAMA's mission is to advocate for women and children's rights by conducting awareness-raising activities for cultural, policy, and legal changes, transformations in the society through the use of media using the method called BANG strategy. Now, TAMA as early feminists in Tanzania, did we recognize ourselves as feminists? In TAMA, yes, we did. Some of the organization's early efforts included printing a monthly newsletter entitled Sauti City, named after Siti bint Saad. Siti simply means also a woman in Kiswahili. Sauti City is the first feminist magazine in Eastern Central Africa, which we published in English and Kiswahili quarterly. We also identified ourselves as feminists, although we were not vocal about it strategically, because we wanted a broad-based acceptance of our programs and campaigns. We did not want to antagonize the mainstream. From 1993, we openly came up as feminists. By then, the TGNP had already established and had articulated feminism in people-friendly language, while TAMWA used the media, both our own publications and radio programs and later TV shows, to slowly introduce the feminist agenda to the United Republic of Tanzania mainstream. We were attacked or abused, but we were relentless. Our goal of feminism was to empower women so as to ensure equality to men. For some people, the term feminism incorrectly came to mean a movement that was anti-male, anti-culture, and anti-religion. For purposes of inclusion, TAMWA preferred to engage activism by including men into the discussion, because it promotes the idea that feminism is about equality among all genders. Because the majority of policymakers in many African countries, and also in Tanzania in particular, are men, some believe that inclusivity is important if women are to gain ground in policy changes that impact them. Now, the use of bank style is a strategic media approach. TAMWA utilized the mainstream media through bank strategy to carry out its agenda and air other concerns publicly. This includes educational materials in newspapers, on billboards, calendars, and posters, as well as through radio and television segments. From 2003 to 2007, 50,000 posters were produced per year, carrying a variety of messages, including about women and leadership, female genital mutilation, and sex violence. By the late 90s, with the proliferation of CSOs, TAMWA had become somewhat respectable and accepted by the mainstream. Why? Because TAMWA co-opted religious leaders, traditional leaders, owners of the media organizations, heads of media organs, law enforcers, the government of Tanzania as important stakeholders in our agenda. This gave TAMWA cachet and muscle. TAMWA's interaction with community-based women via outreach, radio, and community theater brought community-based women into agenda. We were strategic and very strategic. Now, what are the deliverables from lobby and advocacy strategy? Among the deliverables is the 21 crisis centers TAMWA operated. The Kolandoto shelter in Shinyanga is the secret shelters operated for survivors of GBV, gave TAMWA respect in all communities. TAMWA also founded a crisis center in Dar es Salaam in 1990 to provide aid and assistance to those who suffered from domestic violence. In 2003, the center received 787 clients. This center eventually evolved into an independent organization, the Crisis Resolving Center, in 2007. In response to increasing problems with sanitation in primary schools, TAMWA took efforts to expand their coverage and advocacy for health to include hygiene as well. And in 2000, TAMWA launched a breast and cervical cancer awareness campaign, the movement now spearheaded by Tanzanian women doctors, the impact which cannot be explained. The enactment of Special Offense Sexual Provision Act 1998 and the subsequent amendments to the Penal Code also gave us respect. The Land Act 1998 and Village Act 1999 that gave rights to a woman to own land and Agenda Policy 2000 gave us respect. TAMA also worked extensively to include important aspects of women's issues in the writing of the 2014 Tanzanian Constitution and increasing visibility of women in political leadership. We are seeing increased women presidential appointments in various sectors such as judges, district commissioners, and so forth. By June 2010, 3 TAMA members were part of DC team in the country. 2 TAMA members had become members of parliament, and as of today, there are more at the regional level and some more in the parliament. We also reduced case of female genital mutilation. According to 2005 Demographic Health Survey, FGM reduced from 18 to 90, in 1995 to 15% in 2005. These are just but few successes TAMA did in transforming the society. We also have Gender and Media Southern Africa Network. I will not do justice if I don't mention the Gender and Media Southern Africa Network, of which I'm also a pioneer. The aim of the network, officially called Gender and Media Southern Africa, GEMSA, will be to carry out research and conduct advocacy on how consumers of news respond to the way in which women and men are portrayed in the news and throughout the media, participate in the global media monitoring project expected to be conducted. In collaboration with Gender Links, since 2016, there has been a remarkable contribution by GEMSAT as a chapter. We are known as gender policy makers, gender policy, editorial policy, HIV/AIDS policy. Gender has been also able to provide education on gender issues in media houses to universities. There's also one to be held next week by GEMSAT at the university, at Tulane University, to DACO. GEMSAT also conducted several surveys, Gender and Media Baseline Survey, Gender and Media Audience Survey, Global Media Monitoring Project, Media and Progressive Reports on Glass Ceiling, and many more. GEMSAT was established as a gender desk of the Media Institute of Southern Africa, Tanzania chapter. Now let's get to the issues of LGBTIQ. Feminism in Africa is not a monolith. It exists differently, regionally, ethnically, politically, and in region, which all work to impact how women conceptualize what feminism and freedom looks like for them. While African women from, for example, Egypt, Kenya, South Africa, and Senegal will have some commonalities, there will be variations in the way they understand gender and gender struggles. Therefore, these varying cultures alter the way these African women experience the world. Thus, one cannot simply merge all women under an unrealistic expectation of sisterhood, but instead to recognize and respect the differences that exist as a result of these diversities. The issue of sex and same-sex marriage is sensitive, especially for us activists who are divided into 3 groups. There are those who accept that it is the right of a person, people, to choose the partner couple they want to stay with, even if they are of the same sex. And there are those who follow the Holy Scriptures that God created man and woman, and these are supposed to be in romantic and sexual relationship. This group is based on our religious beliefs. The teachings given to us should open our eyes. The development, socialization given to us that this is the right life of the system. We try not to be judgmental about people's decisions, but we wouldn't all, like children, brothers, friends, venturing into physical relationship with same-sex couples. What we are doing is asking God to guide the children on the path which we think is right for us, which is compatible with religious teachings and traditions and culture. And there's a group that does not want to discuss all that. at all. That there is a group of people who have decided to live differently from the system we were brought up with. It's like this. Gays are in our communities. Some of them we know, especially the former TAMWA Executive Director, Leila Sheikh, who led the East African research teams on this group so that they are included in the HIV/AIDS infection control program process, and also to provide ARVs services to the beneficiaries with stigma. The Constitution of the United Republic of Tanzania, in the Basic Rights Clause, has specified that each citizen has the right to live, get treatment, get employment opportunities, get the right to house, have the opportunity to education, etc. This article of the United Republic of Tanzania Constitution does not discriminate against any group. All of citizens of the United Republic of Tanzania get the same rights. Now, the Sexual Offences Act, SOSPA 1998, has outlawed and criminalized sexual acts that are against nature between men or between a man and a woman. The Code of Criminal Offences has set penalties for that act. In addition, the Marriage Act 1971 has classified marriage between man and a woman. There is no article that legalizes same-sex marriage. More so, in the research, we found out that many of those participating in homosexuality started being defiled from childhood. You will empathize with them as they share their stories. Personally, apart from following the teachings of my faith, I also go with the wishes and opinions of the majority. Therefore, I will not promote or defend LGBTIQ. I am not disrespecting them. I will not discriminate. However, I will protect the children from being harmed. Now, what are the lessons learned? Journalism, if strategically used, is a very effective profession in facilitating social transformation. What TAMWA has registered a success in various aspects would not have happened had it not been the association uses journalism profession in the creative manner. Journalism organizations as social pressure groups can play a key role in social transformation to promote human rights and equality for gender perspective. Quality media work produced by TAMWA attracts media attention and ensures maximum coverage. We have witnessed that even at times we would not expect media to publicize our press releases, like during the General Assembly sessions, but quality story get published. Effective TV and radio sport messages can attract local sponsorship. ITV and Radio 1 in 2009 offered airtime worth close to 300 million shillings for a TAMWA sport meant to empower girl child to say no to pregnancy risk temptations. The sport is commonly known as Sidanganyiki, I won't be cheated. Engaging editors, journalists, and producers as key stakeholders of activism organization work strengthens mutual relationship between non-government organizations and the media, and this has positive impact to the latter. The mix of traditional and social media has increased visibility of TAMWA's activism movements and has become a household name. I conclude by saying we still need feminism because it benefits everyone. The feminist movement has affected change in our society, including women's suffrage, greater access to education, more equitable pay with men, the right to initiate divorce proceedings, the right to women to access health services, including access to reproductive rights and the right to land. And one of the main aims of feminism is to tackle the gender roles that have been around for many years and reconstruct these to allow people to live free and empowered lives without being tied down to traditional restrictions. This will benefit both men and women. When men embrace feminism thinking and practice, which emphasizes the value of mutual growth and self-actualization in all relationships, their emotional well-being will be enhanced. A genuine feminist politics always brings us to bondage, to freedom, from lovelessness to loving. We can conclude from the previous discussions that feminism has many important advantages, yet feminism has also implies many serious problems. And in my opinion, the strengthening of the rights of women in general is a good thing. However, we should be careful not to take it too far, since otherwise men will be discriminated at one point in time, and this should not be the goal either. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm handing over to you, Zintle. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mom Rose. That was absolutely insightful, having a look at, feminism from the side of the media. Quite interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Okay, so what happens is that when we have these very important discussions, we tend to run out of time. And that is exactly what is happening to us today, once again. We will therefore ask everyone to please switch on their videos so that we can take a lovely picture, which we'll put up on social media. Oh, look, there we go. Beautiful faces.
Remember to put up their comments as well.
Absolutely, yes. Leave your comments and any other important information on the chat box. I actually keep forgetting to say that. So let's continue to do that while we switch on our cameras. Mine is already on. I see other beautiful faces. Let's join in, everybody. And then we're going to take a beautiful picture. Sis Nomthi, let us know when to smile, because I'm very ready.
So this is the first screen. I'm taking the picture now. Okay. Then I'm moving on to the second screen. Everybody has their camera on.
Let me see mine.
Susan, are you coming onto camera? You're on the screen.
I'm on screen, eh?
Yes. Yes, Aleta. Okay.
Am I there?
Caroline. Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much. Sis Nomthi, that brings us to the conclusion of our day, right?
Yes.
It does, sadly. All right, then. Thank you so much to everyone that participated. That was really quite an insightful session. So thank you so much. Let us see each other on the next engagement.
Just a reminder, the next engagement is on the 30th.
Thank you, bye, Little.
30th of August.
The 21st of August.
30th of August.
Okay, here we go. Everybody, before we say bye-bye, our next engagement is on the 30th of August.
And it will be on feminist leadership.
100%. Thank you so much, Ma'am.
You'll get all the papers from today on the WVL website. I posted the link in the chat. Thank you so much to everyone and to all our amazing.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Mom Dingy.
Bye.
Mom Liwe and Mom Sarah. Mom Rose.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Ma'am Colin, bye.